Hello, welcome back to my channel. I'm Karina, living Lean Six Sigma or living L6S, where I live, breathe, do continuous improvement. We are still on Powerplant and we're on part 5. Our next section is lubrication systems. Question: what will be the result of operating an engine in extremely high temperatures using a lubricant recommended by the manufacturer for a much lower temperature? Answer: the oil pressure will be lower than normal. See, if the oil recommended for lower temperature and it's used in an engine in high temperature, the oil will have a lower viscosity than should be used in the engine. Question: true or false? Statement 1. Gas turbine and reciprocating engine oils can be mixed or used interchangeably. Next statement: most gas turbine engine oils are synthetic. Answer: only the second statement is true. The first one is not. So lubricating reason is the lubricating requirements of a turbine engine are quite different from those of a reciprocating engine. Man, it just hurt reading that statement. So yeah, if you know your car, it's very relatable in this case, about different types of oils and not mixing them. Okay, next question. An oil separator is generally associated with which of the following? Answer: engine-driven vacuum pump. Engine-driven vacuum pump. This one's a trick question because it also gives you an option for an answer saying engine-driven oil pressure pump, which is not it. So reason is an oil separator is used with a wet type engine-driven vacuum pump. Wet type vacuum pumps are lubricated by oil flowing through the pump, and it is discharged with the air that leaves the pump. An oil separator in the discharge line separates the oil from the air. The air is discharged overboard or used in the deicer boots, and the oil is returned to the engine crankcase. Question: the time in seconds required for exactly 60 cubic centimeters of oil to flow through an accurately calibrated orifice at a specific temperature is recorded as a measurement of oil's what? Fill in the blank. Answer: viscosity. So you use this to find the SSU, which is the second Say-Bolt universal viscosity of the oil. The SSU viscosity is usually converted in SAE viscosity, which is more familiar to A&P mechanics. Yes. Upon what quality or characteristic of a lubricating oil is its viscosity indexed based? Answer: it's a rate of change in viscosity with temperature change. Question: lubricating oils with high viscosity index ratings are oils that what? Answer: are oils in which the viscosity does not vary much with temperature change. So let me say this again. Lubricating oils with high viscosity index ratings are oils in which viscosity does not vary much with temperature changes. Next question. Compared to reciprocating engine oils, the types of oils used in turbine engines are: answer: have less tendency to reduce lacquer or coke. Note: synthetic oils in a turbine engine has two advantages over petroleum. It has less tendency to deposit lacquer and coke, and it has less tendency to evaporate at high temperature. Question. The oil used in reciprocating engines has a relatively high viscosity due to answer, large clearances and high operating temperatures. Next, if all other requirements can be met, what type of oil should be used to achieve theoretical perfect engine lubrication? Answer, the thinnest oil that will stay in place and maintain a reasonable film strength. Question. In addition to lubrication, reducing friction between moving parts, engine oil performs what function? Answer, it cools, it seals, it cleans, it prevents corrosion, and it cushions impact or shock loads. Question. Which of these characteristics is desirable in turbine engine oil? Answer, high flash point. Question. The viscosity of a liquid is a measure of its answer, resistance to flow. Question. What type of oil system is usually found on turbine engines? Ooh, turbine engines. Okay, let's think about this. Answer, dry sump, pressure, and spray. Note, most turbojet engines use dry sump lubrication systems. A pressure pump directs the oil to the oil jets or nozzles located in the pressure line adjacent to or within the bearing compartments and the rotor shaft couplings. The oil is delivered to the bearings in a form of an atomized. Oh my God. Question. Which of the following helps determine the proper grade of oil to use in a particular engine? Answer, operating speeds of bearings. Operating speeds of bearings. Question. Specific gravity is a comparison of the weight of substance to the weight of an equal volume of, answer, distilled water at a specific temperature. So note, specific gravity is a ratio between a definite volume of the material being measured to an equal volume of pure distilled water at its maximum density, which is 4 degrees Celsius. Question. Which of the following has the greatest effect on the viscosity of lubricating oil? Answer, say it with me, temperature. Question. What advantage do mineral-based lubricants have over vegetable oil-based lubricants when used in aircraft engines? Answer, chemical stability. Chemical stability. Question. The recommended aircraft engine lubricants are, answer, mineral or synthetic based. Question. High tooth pressures and high rubbing velocities, such as occur with spur type gears, require the use of, answer, an EP lubricant. EP is short for extreme pressure. Question. Manufacturers normally require turbine engine oil servicing within a short amount engine shutdown, primarily to what? Answer, prevent over servicing. Note, you want a service to be accomplished as soon as practical after engine shutdown, Over-servicing may occur because in some engines, the oil from the storage tank seeps to the lower portions of the engines after the engine sits for some time without being operated. Question: what type of oil do most engine manufacturers recommend for new reciprocating engine break-in? Answer: straight mineral oil. This is a trick question. Straight mineral oil. Question: what type of oil do most engine manufacturers recommend after new reciprocating engine break-in? New reciprocating. Answer: ashless dispersant oil. AD oil, ashless dispersant oil. Question: the type of oil pumps most commonly used on turbine engines are classified as what? Answer: positive displacement. So you have different options between vane type, spur gear type, or gerotor, Garota type. So the oil pumps used in turbojet engine lubrication systems are of the positive displacement types. Question: as a general rule, the mixture setting on a reciprocating engine operating at or near takeoff power that provides the best cooling is, answer, full rich. Your mixture setting should be full rich. This is during takeoff power. Question: the engine oil temperature regulator is usually located between which of the following on a dry sump reciprocating engine? Answer: the scavenger pump outlet and the oil storage tank. The scavenger pump outlet and the oil storage tank. Question: what will happen to the return oil if the oil line between the scavenger pump and the oil cooler separates? Answer: the return oil will be pumped overboard. Question: at cruise RPMs, revolutions per minute, at cruise RPM, some oil will flow through the relief valve of a gear type engine oil pump. This is normal as the relief valve is set at a pressure which is, answer, lower than the pressure pump's capabilities. This is a trick question. Lower than the pressure pump capabilities. True or false? Statement 1. Fuel may be used to cool oil in gas turbine engines. Statement 2. Ram air may be used to cool air in gas turbine engines. Answer: both statements are true. Question: in a reciprocating engine oil system, the temperature bulb senses oil temperature, answer, at the point after the oil has passed through the oil cooler. Question: the oil dampened main bearing utilized in some turbine engine is used to, answer, provide an oil film between the outer race and the bearing housing in order to reduce vibration tendencies in a rotor system and to allow slight misalignment. Question: what is the purpose of the last chance oil filters? Last chance. Answer: to filter the oil immediately before it enters the main bearings. Question. In a jet engine, which uses a fuel oil heat exchanger, the oil temperature is controlled by a thermostatic valve that regulates the flow of what? Answer. Oil through the heat exchanger. Note, the oil may bypass the heat exchanger if no cooling is needed. Question. What prevents pressure within the lubricating oil tank from rising above or falling below ambient pressure in a reciprocating engine? Answer. Oil tank vent. Oil tank vent. This is a trick question. They're going to try to throw oil tank check valve, oil pressure relief valve. Don't fall for it. Oil tank vent. Question. In an axial flow turbine engine, compressor bleed air is sometimes used to aid in cooling the answer. Turbine, vanes, blades, and bearings. Question. Oil picks up the most heat from which of the following turbine engine components? Answer. Turbine bearings. This one's a trick question. Turbine bearings. Which of the following is a function of the fuel oil heat exchanger on a turbojet engine? Answer. Increases fuel temperature. Note, not only does this decrease the temperature of the oil, but when you exchange the heat, it increases the temperature of the fuel. Question. According to the FAA, Federal Aviation Regulations, oil tank fillers on a turbine engine must be marked with the words answer. Oil, O-I-L. 14 CFR 33.71C, Section 5. Question. Oil tank fillers on a reciprocating engine are marked with the words answer. Oil in accordance with the 14 CFR Part 23. This one's a trick question. Question. After making a welded repair to a pressurized type turbine engine oil tank, the tank should be pressure checked to what? Answer. Trick question. No less than 5 psi plus the maximum operating pressure of the tank. Question. Why are fixed orifice nozzles used in the lubricating system of a gas turbine engine? Answer. To provide a relatively constant oil flow to the main bearings at all engine speeds. Question. Possible failure related to ferrous metal particles in turbine engine oil cause an electrical indicating type magnetic chip detector to indicate their presence by answer. Bridging the gap between the detector center, which is a positive electrode, and the ground electrode. Ground, black, negative, however you want to remember that. Note, a magnetic chip detector warns of the possible impending engine failure by indicating the presence of ferrous metal particles. Question. What would be the probable result if the oil system pressure relief valve should stick in the open position on a turbine engine? Answer. Insufficient lubrication. Note, In a turbojet engine, the oil would flow through it rather than going through the passages in the lubricating system. Question: what is the primary purpose of the oil to fuel heat exchanger? Answer: cool the oil. It just so happens that the second purpose is to raise the temperature of the fuel, but its original primary purpose is to cool the oil. Trick question. Question: what unit in an aircraft engine lubrication system is adjusted to maintain the desired system pressure? Answer: oil pressure relief valve. This one's a different question than before. This one's an oil pressure relief valve. This is aircraft engine lubrication system to do desired pressure. The other one was what prevents pressure within the lubricating oil tank from rising above or falling below ambient pressure, but this is in a reciprocating engine, and that was an oil tank vent. So oil tank vent is not the same answer as this other one, which was oil pressure relief valve. Question: low oil pressure can be detrimental to the internal engine components. However, high oil pressure would do what? Answer: it should be limited to the engine manufacturer's recommendation. Note: excessive oil pressure can damage oil coolers and burst oil lines. A burst oil line could cause a loss of all of the lubricating oil. Why didn't you just say that? This one's a trick question. Question: what is the primary purpose of the oil breather pressurization system that is used on a turbine engine? Answer: provides a proper oil spray pattern from the main bearing oil jets. Question: the purpose of directing bleed air to the outer turbine case on some engines is to, answer, provide optimum turbine blade tip clearance by controlling thermal expansion. To provide optimum turbine blade tip clearance by controlling thermal expansion. Question: some larger reciprocating engines use a compensating oil pressure relief valve to, answer, provide a high engine oil pressure when the oil is cold and automatically lower the oil pressure when the oil warms up. So it self-regulates. Okay. Question: in order to relieve excessive pump pressure in an engine's internal oil system, most engines are equipped with a, answer, relief valve. So relieve excessive pump pressure, so the pressure's in the pump, not in a tank, and the engine's internal oil system, most engines are equipped with a relief valve. Question: what is the source of most of the heat that is absorbed by the lubricating oil in a reciprocating engine? Answer: piston and cylinder walls. Reciprocating engine, they're going to trick you. They're going to say crankshaft. No, it's the piston and cylinder walls. That is the hottest part of the reciprocating engine. Question: how are the teeth of the gears in the accessory section of an engine normally lubricated? Answer: by splashed or sprayed oil. Question: what is the purpose of the check valve generally used in a dry sump lubrication system? Answer: to prevent the oil from the supply tank from seeping into the crankcase during inoperative periods. Question: which of the following factors has the least effect on the oil consumption of a specific engine? Answer: mechanical efficiency. Question: how is the oil collected by the piston oil ring returned to the crankcase? Answer: through holes drilled in the piston oil ring groove. Question: which of the following lubrication system components is never located between the pressure pump and the engine pressure system? Answer: fuel line for oil dilution system. Fuel line for the oil dilution system. Those are never between pressure pump and the engine pressure system. That sounds like a lot of pressure, and you don't want to pressure some fuel into something unless it's like fuel injection, right? So it says, note the fuel line where the gasoline is directed into a lubricating oil to dilute it for cold weather starting is connected into a lubricating system where the oil pressure is the same as it is inside the oil tank. Question: as an aid to cold weather starting, the oil dilution system thins the oil with? Answer: gasoline. Question: the basic oil pressure relief valve setting for a newly overhauled engine is made? Answer: in the overhaul shop. Note, if the pressure is not correct when the engine is started, it can be adjusted. Question: what is the oil temperature bulb located on a dry sump reciprocating engine? Answer: oil inlet line. Oil inlet line. This one's a trick question. Question: cylinder walls are usually lubricated by? Answer: splashed or sprayed oil. Question: if an oil filter element becomes completely clogged, the? Answer: the bypass valve will open and the oil pump will supply unfiltered oil. Note, it is much better to have unfiltered oil going through the engine than for the engine to have no oil. Question: oil accumulation in the cylinders of an inverted inline engine and the lower cylinders of a radial engine is normally reduced or prevented by? Answer: extended cylinder skirts. Note, inverted inline engines and radial engines have skirts that extend up to and into the crankcase far enough to prevent oil flooding the lower cylinders. These extended skirts do not prevent oil from getting into the cylinders, but they do minimize it. Engines with cylinders extending below the center line should be pulled through by hand before they are started to be sure There is no oil in any of the lower cylinders. So your answer is extended cylinder skirts. Question. What is the primary purpose of changing aircraft engine lubricating oils at predetermined periods? Answer. The oil becomes contaminated with moisture, acids, and finely divided suspended solid particles. Note, some of the contaminants can be gasoline, moisture, acids, dirt, carbon, and metallic particles. Question. What determines the minimum particle size which will be excluded or filtered by a Kuno type filter? And this one says stacked disc edge filtration filter. Answer. The spacer thickness. The spacer thickness. A Kuno filter separates contaminants from the oil by passing the oil between the discs in a stack. Think of it kind of like a Swiss cheese model, but instead of cheese, it's discs. That sounded cooler in my head, I guess. Question. What is the primary purpose of the hopper? The hopper located in the oil supply tank of some dry sump engine installations? Answer. To reduce the time required to warm the oil to operating temperatures. Question. The purpose of the flow control valve in a reciprocating engine oil system is to, answer, direct oil through or around the oil cooler. Note, the flow control valve in an oil cooler used on an aircraft reciprocating engine determines which of the two possible paths the oil takes as it passes through the oil cooler. If it's hot, the valve directs it through the core of the cooler where the heat can be removed. If the oil is not hot, then it bypasses around the outside of the core of the cooler. Question. Where are sludge chambers when used in aircraft engine lubrication systems usually located? Answer. In the crankshaft throws. Note, sludge is thrown by centrifugal force away from the oil passages and into these chambers, and it is held there until the engine is overhauled. Question. Why is an aircraft reciprocating engine oil tank on a dry sump lubrication system equipped with a vent line? Answer. To prevent pressure buildup in the oil tank. Note, this venting system prevents the heating and expansion of the oil from causing a buildup of air pressure inside the oil tank. Okay. Question. Excessive oil is prevented from accumulating on the cylinder walls of a reciprocating engine by, answer, oil control rings on the pistons. See, that's what I was thinking about earlier when I was saying the Swiss cheese model. That's what I was thinking about. The oil rings on the pistons. Next question. Two statements, true or false. Statement number 1. Wet sump oil systems are the most commonly used in gas turbine engines. Statement 2. In most turbine engine oil tanks, a slight pressurization of the tank is desired to ensure a positive flow of oil. Answer. Statement 1 is not true, but statement 2 is true. So why statement 1 is wrong? Wet sump lubrication systems are not commonly used on gas turbine engines. Question. The pumping capacity of the scavenger pump in a dry sump aircraft engine lubrication system does what? Answer. Is greater than the capacity of the oil supply pump. Is greater than the capacity of the oil supply pump. Note, the oil moved by the pressure pump, it's because it's hotter and has air trapped in it. Question. In which of the following situations will the oil cooler automatic bypass valve be open to the greatest amount? Answer. Engine oil below normal operating temperature. Engine oil below normal operating temperature. Think about it. If it's not hot, like the other question, then it goes around the case instead of doing a heat exchange. Question. In order to maintain a constant oil pressure as the clearances between the moving parts of an engine increase through normal wear, the supply pump output, what? Remains relatively constant at a given RPM, with less oil being returned to the pump inlet by the relief valve. With less oil being returned to the pump inlet by the relief valve. Note, in order to maintain a constant oil pressure as the clearances between the moving parts of an engine increase through normal wear, the output of the oil pressure pump remains relatively constant for any given RPM, but since there is more oil flowing out through the bearings and other moving parts, less oil is returned to the inlet side of the pump by the relief valve. Question. The valve assemblies of opposed reciprocal or reciprocating engines are lubricated by means of a, answer, pressure system. Pressure system. Question. What will result if an oil filter becomes completely blocked? Answer. Oil will flow at the normal rate through the system. Note, at 14 CFR Part 33, it says airworthiness standard for aircraft engines requires that an aircraft engine oil strainer must be constructed and installed in such a way that the oil will flow through the engine at its normal rate, even though the strainer or filter element is completely blocked. Question. A turbine engine dry sump lubrication system of the self-contained high pressure design does what? Answer. Consists of pressure, breather, and a scavenge subsystem. Note, a turbine engine dry sump lubrication system of the self-contained high pressure type, such as used in the Pratt & Whitney JT Joker Tango 3 Delta 3D engine, consists of three basic subsystems. The pressure subsystem supplies oil to the main engine bearing and the accessory drives. The scavenger subsystem scavenges oil from the bearing compartments and the accessory drives. And the breather subsystem interconnects the individual bearing compartments and the lubricating oil tank. Question. Lube system last chance filters in turbine engines are usually cleaned when? Answer. During overhaul. Question. How are the piston pins of most aircraft engines lubricated? Answer. By oil which is sprayed or thrown by the master or connecting rods. Question. The vent line connecting the oil supply tank and the engine in some dry sump engine installation permits what? Answer. The oil tank to be vented through the normal engine vent. Okay? Oil tank is vented. Oil tank is vented. Okay? Question. An engine lubrication system pressure relief valve is usually located between the what? Pump and the internal oil system. Question. Where is the oil of a dry sump reciprocating engine exposed to the temperature control valve sense unit? Answer. Oil cooler inlet. Note, hot oil is routed through the core of the cooler and the cold oil is routed around the outside of the core, so it's not exchanging heat. Question. Under which of the following conditions is the oil cooler flow control valve open on a reciprocating engine? Oil cooler flow valve, control valve, reciprocating engine. Answer. When the temperature of the oil returning from the engine is too low. Temperature is too low. Question. The purpose of a relief valve installed in the tank venting system of a turbine engine oil tank is to answer. Prevent oil pump cavitation by maintaining a constant pressure on the oil pump inlet. Question. In a reciprocating engine, oil is directed from the pressure relief valve to the inlet side of the what? Answer. Pressure pump. Inlet side of the pressure pump. Question. If the oil in a oil cooler core and the annular jacket becomes congealed, what unit prevents damage to the cooler? Answer. Surge protection valve. Surge protection valve. So it's congealed, it's like gunky, it's in a pipe or a vein, and then all of a sudden it gets loose and then it surges. So this would be a protection, surge protection valve. Question. The primary source of oil contamination in a normally operating reciprocating engine is, answer, combustion deposits due to combustion chamber blowby, due to combustion chamber blowby and oil migration on the cylinder walls. Question. A drop in oil pressure may be caused by, answer, foreign material under the relief valve. Under the relief valve. This one is a trick question. They're going to say some kind of valve is open, something is stuck open. They're going to say other things, but your answer is foreign material under the relief valve. Question. The main oil filters strain the oil at which point in the system? Answer. Just as it leaves the pressure pump. Question. Which of the following prevents oil from entering the main accessory case when the engine is not running? Answer. Check valve. Question. An oil tank having a capacity of 5 gallons must have an expansion space of how much? Answer. It has to be 10% of the tank capacity or 1/2 gallon. So your answer will be on this test 2 quarts. Question. As a general rule, a small amount of small fuzzy particles or gray metallic paste on a turbine engine magnetic chip detector will what? Is considered to be the result of normal wear. Note, if metallic chips or flakes are in there, then it's an indication of a serious internal wear or breakage. So paste, fine paste, it's normal wear. But chunks, chips, flakes, that is not normal wear. Question. Why is expansion space required in an engine oil supply tank? Think about it. You're up in the air, you're coming down, there's a lot of altitude changes. Answer. For oil enlargement and collection of foam. So oil expands when it gets hot, and then you have altitude. It doesn't mention altitude, but that's what I went to. But yeah, heat. Heat expands things, so this answer is for oil enlargement and collection of foam. Question. The purpose of a dwell chamber chamber in a turbine engine oil tank is to provide what? Answer. Separation of entrained air from the scavenged oil. A dwell chamber or de-aerator, that's what it could also be called, a de-aerator. It's where you separate the air from the oil. Question. Which of the following bearing types must be continuously lubricated by pressure oil? Answer. Plain. This one's a trick question. Plain bearing types. So note, friction type bearings, which are usually called plain bearings, must be continuously lubricated by pressure oil. They're going to try to confuse you by saying roller bearings, ball bearings. Don't fall for it. It's plain bearings. All right, we have completed part 5. Our next section in part 6 is going to start with ignition and starting systems. I will see you in the next video. Thanks so much. Don't forget to like and subscribe.